a committee meeting to deal with the future of slurry seal. I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Councilor Boyle, Councilor Thompson, I'm Councilor Green, Councilor Driscoll, and Council President Hudson. So I guess you guys want to just start off by, the background on unimproved streets, who pays for them, how we maintain them, and then how we came to be slurry seal, how effective it is, the timeline, is it the best practices, and just kind of a general overview like that.
And sorry, we only have 2 mics for 3 people, and we always have to pass the mic around in this group. So,
we're gonna Kevin Hunter is our expert slurry seal coordinator. He's our street repair superintendent, so he's gonna actually go over some of the issues, and that we have Lori Iacco to go over some of the financial stuff.
Our slurry seal program has been around for about 30 years. It helps we'll talk about unimproved roads. Our unimproved roads are streets that do not have curbs, and there's no concrete base. Our improved roads have curbs with concrete base. So basically our unimproved roads our asphalt just sits on dirt. So that's where slurry seal comes in, because the roads, unimproved roads just crack. The asphalt just sits on the grass line, the curb line, and they just continue to crack, and then they make their way into the center line. So that's why we, however many years ago, went with the slurry seal program to seal the roads. That's basically what it does. It seals the cracks, the dips, to keep them from not having to pave every single one of our city roads.
Effective?
Very effective. It's
equivalent to what? Sealing a driveway, right?
Yeah,
but it's just a better material.
Yeah, it has special oils, special stone, and concrete. So, it's much more durable for our plows and all the traffic that, our roads get.
So how many years does having slurry seal, how often do you have to apply it, and then how often do you have to just tear up the road and redo the asphalt?
But we do, we got 4 cycles, and so every 4 years, every street gets applied. There's some streets that I come back to 4 years later that look just like, we just got done slurring it the week before. Some streets we go back to, and it all depends on how they're traveled. If it's a little side street, it can stay in good shape.
Can I just? I think what you're bringing something up. I just learned something this year that I did not know about some of our unimproved streets, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I was under the impression that ideally we would remove the unimproved streets and replace them with what would be improved streets, right? And I don't know if that's what you were kind of saying, like when do we dig them up and replace them? But some of the unimproved streets are unimproved streets for drainage reasons and for other structural reasons within the city. They're not necessarily lesser streets or lesser quality streets. Some of the reason for it is actually functional, which I was not aware of. So some people think when we go and slurry seal a road, some constituents and people that I've talked to in the community think that it's sort of like this patch that we're putting on sort of the lesser streets, while everybody else has these. And I live on an unimproved street. I feel the pain. It's awful. I don't like it. But, whatever purpose it serves, I'm at the bottom of a hill. It's probably a drainage thing. But people think that when we do something like slurry seal that we're putting this sort of cheap Band-Aid over some of our roads while other roads are getting better attention. But I just wanted to point out that was something that I recently learned. It's not always the case.
But I think, that's true, and I think it's important that we understand that, but at a certain point, you can't just slurry seal forever. The underlying asphalt does need to be replaced. Even if you're not going to improve the street, right, the asphalt itself needs to be replaced, right? Absolutely. So how frequently does that happen?
We try to overlay, 3-4 streets a year. Sometimes we, depends on our recon streets. If we, we get them done in a timely fashion, then we can do a couple overlays. I did 2.
Just give them a rundown of overlay, just in case you guys don't understand what an overlay is.
Yeah, please.
Overlay would be putting fresh blacktop over a unimproved street.
And how much, I guess my question would be, part of the reason I was eager to have this committee meeting as well is I had a number of constituents write me saying that they thought slurry seal was a waste of money. I'm not saying that it is. I want to learn exactly what. So do we have any kind of cost analysis regarding what's the cost differentiation between slurry seal and overlay? You know what I mean? Theoretically, to Councilor Green's point about if we have to get there eventually, do we know definitively via cost analysis if it makes more sense to slurry seal versus just allocating that $1 million plus to just doing more overlay? Or and again, I'm not saying I know definitively one way or the other. I'm just trying to figure out kind of what the cost analysis would be.
Yeah, it's right in front of you, Council.
Oh, okay.
That's to do the cycle that we slurried this year. There was 137 streets in the cycle. It cost us roughly $934,000 to do the slurry, and it would cost $11 million to overlay those streets.
And cycle 1 is the smallest cycle we have, correct? So you're talking 11 million maybe this year and maybe 15 next, and it just goes on and on if we had to overlay all those streets.
But how often do we have to overlay? So I guess my thought would be if we allocated that $1 million over the course of 10 years, we would at the end have a completely new set of streets, right? I mean, over the course of or 11 cycles. So sorry, over the course of so it'd be 40 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do we know? I guess I'm just curious, cost effectivity in that regard. You know what I mean?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. So slurry is, less manpower, correct? A little bit than the overlay?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so I'm wrong. But where I was going with that is, I would believe that an overlay would it's a more detailed thing that we would have to do besides overlay. But that's why we slurry, correct?
Well, before y'all move on, let me ask you a question. So we're saying overlay. So it's slurry, overlay, and recon, right?
Yes.
Or is overlay and recon the same?
Well,
I don't think that
it's
we
not
tear
the same
up the
thing.
recon.
No, we tear up the recon.
So the overlay and the slurry are going to be more temporary than doing the straight up recon.
That's correct.
So wait,
You can't recon an unimproved street.
Right.
we can't so recon is tearing up,
Milling and paving.
starting from scratch. Overlay is a fresh layer of.
Milling a little, and then you're putting new asphalt down.
Sorry, just wanted to clarify that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and that's what I was getting at, because you have 3 different procedures going on. You have the slurry, the overlay, and the recon. So we still have the 3 different procedures. I know about the unimproved streets, but what I need to ask and what we need to find out is, because I'm totally opposed to those folks getting this slurry money, totally. But I'm looking at the numbers on here, and I'm looking at the cost. I'm looking at the cost of the sweepers and the trucks and all of those good things. So if we do the balance and balance out the total at some point, because we might as well just say we're going to give out $1 million this year for slurry. So every 4 years or every how many years we're going to do that $1 million for slurry, correct? Then we're going to do how many million for recon, and then we're going to do how many for overlay, right? So I'm just thinking, for me, because we always talk about creating jobs, okay? That's where I'm going with this. So if we're going to put that $1 million out for this company to come in and put down some fingernail polish, couldn't we, I don't mean to say it like that, but that's what it is.
I think you're going where I hope you're going. You're talking about hiring more people?
Yeah. I mean, and I see the price for the machinery, and I know you got a better system than I do, but I did price it also, and they have used machinery, if that would be a way that we could capture and be able to hire more folks within the city structure. And then I'm done, so you can tell me where we're going with that. There we go.
I would defer to you, Kev. I mean, I know having more people would be great, but not having the equipment to actually do the correct job would.
Because not to be funny, but last year I do recall. I don't know, Susan, if you remember, and they had to go back and they had to rework the slurry because it wasn't holding up there off of James Street.
I think when they first started the slurry, we had some. First year was a little rough. We had like some trial and error.
Yeah, Steve, you
problems.
remember that?
That
Yeah.
micro.
But there was, did you not do a study on this? Was there not a study done by the I-team?
So we did micropaving, which is a thicker version of slurry. So slurry is about 1/8 of an inch thick. Micropaving is about 1/4 of an inch thick. It's another type of preventative maintenance. And so I have the results. Well, I don't have, that's supposed to last between 3 and 5 years. We piloted it initially in construction season 2016. So before the study can be complete, we would do that next year. But one of the things about the cost that you're talking about, so for micropaving, and I would assume for slurry as well, you're supposed to be able to do the application 3 or 4 times, and you do it when the road is still in relatively good condition. So for us, I think that would be if it was rated 7 or above, maybe even 8 or above. But what you would see is that for every dollar you spend by doing the application of the preventative maintenance, you should in the long run be able to save between 6 and 10 for the repaving cost, because you're extending the life of that road. So our data for the micropaving project still isn't in, because that would be next year. But I think that's a similar concept for the slurry, is that by doing this preventative maintenance, you're extending the life of the road, so in the long run, you'll be able to save money.
Sorry, Adria, questions. So is there other alternatives besides slurry and micropaving? Is there anything else out there that other cities are doing that we should consider at least?
There are other alternatives, and Kevin is the expert on this, so he can talk about those. But we do know that even in DeWitt, they did chip sealing this past year. Rochester does similar things, and there are different price points for all of those, so you can kind of evaluate the pros and cons for them. But again, I'm going to have to defer to DPW, who lives and breathes this.
Okay, just real quick, you touched on a number there. For every dollar, you save 6 to 8 because you maintain the quality of the road longer. That's kind of where the information I was hoping to assess. So I question, is that if it's a 7 or an 8 or above only? Or, I mean, if the road is at a 4 or a 5, does that?
So again, we're still waiting for the results, but what we have seen is that it's important to do the preventative maintenance early on. So in the pilot, we did kind of look at a scale of from, I think, all the way from 4 until 8. And I did a quick drive around to some of these roads earlier this week, and I would agree that you have to intervene early on when it's those higher rated qualities. You have to do that preventative maintenance early on. But again, I'm going to defer most of this to.
And I don't know if this is a question for you, Ken. In general, what is the average state of our roads? Like, say, I saw you in Eastwood over there in my neck of the woods. Are your average roads 7s, 8s, 4s, 5s? I mean, I know it obviously varies from place to place, but if you had to say on average, I know there's going to be some 3s in there or whatever, but on average, would you say the roads in Eastwood are about
5, 6.
5 or 6? And does the cost effectiveness still apply? I mean, I don't know if I don't want to ask the wrong person the questions, but
no, if the road is too far gone, then you've lost your window of opportunity, and then you need to wait for it to deteriorate and do a mill and pave. So you could, the most cost effective way to do this is, okay, so say it's at a 10 here.
Catch it at a 10.
Yeah, when it drops to an 8, do your preventative maintenance. When it gets back then down again to 8, you do your preventative maintenance. You do that 4 or 5 times, and then you just let it go. And as long as it's safe to drive on, just let it go until it's a 2 or a 3, and then you invest in the mill and pave. So you shouldn't be doing, milling and paving 5s, for example. You should be milling, unless again, it's a very busy road or it's causing a safety hazard.
Got to take off, but I just want to ask this. I know we ask this every year, but is there any kind of a way you can get us? I want to see what the 4s. I want to see what the 4s to 6s are. Then I want to see the 8 and aboves, because I think I was told last time they were more on the lower end, right?
Would you like it in a map form, or would you like it in like a bar chart? What would you?
In a bar chart.
Okay, we can get that for you.
Okay. I want the rating.
What percentage of streets
I
are
want the
4s and
ratings. I want to
6s?
know, right, I want to know what the percentage of streets and what their ratings are from the lowest number to the highest number.
So I guess, Kevin, my question is, what makes slurry the best option for us? And, do we consider other options, and would we in the future, or is slurry kind of the best route for us?
I mean, the best option would be to pave them, but it's, financially, it's
Not feasible.
almost impossible. So, I mean, I would love to pave every single one of our roads. There's other alternatives that we've just have never looked into. Oil and stone, which ultimately, after oil and stone, you're supposed to slurry the road. It all comes back to slurry. I mean, it's, I wish we could slurry our improved roads after we were, 5 years of just, we milled and paved a road 5 years ago, slurry it. It would help the stress cracks that happen, because they happen, and so they don't fall apart.
So wait, do you only slurry unimproved streets?
We tried to micropave when we did the pilot. We tried those on improved roads with curbs. They wanted us to do them on 5s, 4s.
As low as a 4.
Yeah,
4 and
which
5.
it's
Yeah.
you can't do it.
It's too far
Right.
gone.
It's too far gone. Absolutely. So I mean, that's one thing I'd like to do is.
So
That would add an additional cost too, because now we'd be slurring, milling and paving, and then also have a crew out to do micro surfacing on the streets that we paved a couple years ago.
okay.
So I know one of the things that has been brought up from fellow counselors is that right now it looks like there's only one company locally that can really seem to be able to bid on this. So one of my questions is, if we were to do something separate from slurry, whether it be one of the other alternatives, is there more of a market for that, and would we get more robust bidding? And you might not know that, obviously, but
I'm going to say probably not. Any alternative, Suco, is, that's what they do. Anything to do with roads. So
you're saying even with alternatives, suit coat would be the primary
I'm assuming.
one in the area?
Yes.
One of the bigger issues that I know that the commissioner and Kevin brought up is that the equipment that needs to come.
Yeah.
And is it cost effective for companies to come from other communities and station that equipment here? And so that, I think, has been one of the huge issues around people even thinking whether it was cost efficient to bid on it.
Mm-hmm. And that would be if it's just unimproved. If you actually expanded it to doing the other roads, it might change that formula. Maybe not. And Mary, is there, you've been involved with the bidding process for this, and can you give us a little, that was going to be my question, Counselor.
So in the last go-around of bids, we needed to reach out to more firms, because that was, the council had expressed that to us, and we did. And some of those firms, one in particular was Vestal Paving. They came up, they took out the plan documents, or the bid documents, and then they never ended up submitting a bid. And I believe this was 2 years ago. In 2016, we reached out to them, why didn't you submit the bid? And it was, the bid went out in May. It's late. Those calendars for those paving contractors, bids right now should be out for the work to be done next summer. So it's timing.
Okay.
So wait, I'm confused. So you followed up with Vesco and you asked them why they didn't submit, and what was their answer?
Yeah, it was, especially since they took the plan documents out. They took, the notes that I have in my email is that the bid was out too late for them. You know, their calendar was full for that summer.
They couldn't do any more work.
Got you. And have we ever looked at other regions and done cost analysis? I mean, like, say, you know, is Rochester paying roughly the same cost for slurry seal? Yeah. Adria's nodding.
I don't know. I don't compare other.
You know what I mean? If someone sells
bids.
you an apple and, you don't know what
Rochester.
apples are being sold for in other markets,
does it
they can
in
tell you it's
Buffalo.
$10.
You do Rochester.
In Rochester,
They do
Buffalo.
Rochester as well. What about, like, other markets that are not Sucos based?
Mary Robinson, I know
That's what I was gonna say.
Gordy
That's
did
pretty
the work
much it.
on this,
They
and
take-
we were trying
They
to
take the
check.
bulk
Did
of
he
the
do
work
any
in
research
our
Run the bulk of the
community.
work.
on that?
They do the
Yeah.
specialty.
PA.
Right. They do Pennsylvania
They
as
have the
well.
people, they have the equipment, they take the business. When you corner in the market, I mean, that's just what happens.
So I guess the next question that Councilor President Hudson generally brings up, so I'll bring it up, is about hiring for Succoat, and that's one of the things that I know that she has brought up at the meetings, and we've tried to.
Well, as far as,
Lamont is here. Yeah.
I
So
was gonna say,
can we-
Lamont,
yeah.
can speak to that.
Since 2016, when we had to not give them the contract, they've been meeting the goals ever since. So 2017, they met our
They met the goals?
EO
Okay.
goals. And this year, they're on track to meet our goals as well. They're at about 12% for minority participation businesses. And women businesses, they're at about 8%. And they're 10% with our minority workforce goals, 9% with our female workforce goals, and 18% for city residents. So it seemed like they're doing a little better compared to years prior to 2016.
What was the ideal hope? Were you guys, are those numbers hitting the targets you had set, or they're?
Yeah, because our MWBE goals are 20%,
Right.
Our EO are combined 20%, and our residency workforce goals are 20%. So.
So did they say any reasonings, or did they cite any reasons for concerns, problems, unable to get people that might want to participate, businesses that are in, stuff like that?
I mean, like in 2016, we had a battle with them to really get them to understand that we were serious about our goals. Since then, I think all the pressure has caused them to stop looking at excuses and make arrangements to meet our goals.
And
So
they've done that?
Yeah, they've been doing it.
Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions?
I guess I would still wonder, I understand your point about, I mean, ideal world, we do a lot more paving, right? We do a lot more, if we had a large surplus, there would be a lot more, what's the other one? Not recon, but overlay. We'd have more overlay, right? If we had bigger budgets.
We do Arden Drive, for instance,
What's that?
the 100 block of Arden Drive.
Right. But I guess I'm curious, are we, how to say it, are we throwing good money after bad kind of situation where we're slurry sealing at fives rather than, you know what I mean? Like if we're at fives with them, and we should be doing them at 7 or 8s. I know we don't have the option to go back in time and fix it, but do we still feel we're getting, I guess that must be the answer, right? It's kind of not an ideal situation, but this is the best we can do with the resources that we have is the slurry seal? Or do you feel like it's still, I guess to what level do you feel like confident that this is the right tactic and there is no plan B? I don't know. Is that the situation? I'm just kind of curious. Money is obviously an issue, right? Resources are an issue.
Well, I say slurry seal is like a pill that you take to prolong life. I mean, if you could take a pill every day just to prolong the age, obviously we graduated in '97, so if we can go back to '97, that'd be great. But I think slurry seal kind of stops some of the process. I mean, it's going to get there, but it stops it from
getting worse.
Getting worse. So, I mean, that's what we're, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Kev, that's pretty much what slurry seal is, correct?
And we also, my department, we usually put about 500 tons of asphalt, patch-wise, on the streets that, you know, the quadrant for that season. In the past, we used the school district's little paving machine, and so that helps. You know, we're not just throwing slurry seal on a 5.
Right.
It might be rated a 5, but we kind of make it like a 7 before we slur it. We're not slurring over potholes. We're not slurring, you know,
Right.
over cuts. We're trying to make the right.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed that in Eastwood. Yeah, you guys did. You fixed up the quality of the road and evened out where it was uneven in different places, and filled in potholes, and yeah.
So I mean, with
So in addition, it's kind of not getting the whole picture if you just talk about the slurry seal, because there's also the repairs that are done to the road before the slurry is put down.
If I can just
Go out first.
add real quick that I think we are doing, you know, as well as we can right now with the resources, but that's not to say that we're not looking at other things to do. So I think a couple different initiatives we're working on is having a more data-driven process in terms of evaluating our roads so that they're scored more consistently across the city. Also demonstrating to our state partners that we can effectively spend money that they're able to give us. Looking at our capital planning budget and to make sure that we're effectively spending the money that we set aside each year for, you know, that we're budgeting it properly and then that we're executing it properly. Looking at different types of asphalt that hopefully should help to maintain the integrity of our roads. Asphalt that works better in cold climates so that we're not constantly going and doing, you know, the hot patch that doesn't work, or and also looking at our asphalt plant to see, you know, what options we have there in terms of the asphalt that we generate, whether or not there's a different type that we could use that would perhaps prolong the integrity of our roads. So even though, you know, that's not to say this is the way it's going to operate forever and ever, we are looking at a number of initiatives to try and make this process as efficient and data-driven and equitable and efficient as possible.
Great.
I'm going to waddle away now.
That made me want to open up a whole nother committee meeting and session, but how does our asphalt plant fit into all this when you started talking about that?
So we...
Is that...
Yeah,
did I just like
a
kick
whole other
over
can
a
of worms.
can of,
That's
yeah,
right, I
a
opened
can
it
of
up.
gasoline with that one? I'm just kind of generally curious. And
Yeah, I mean, and Kevin
That's what
can
we're here for, right?
Kevin can speak to this in more detail, but you know, we produce the asphalt that DPW uses. There have been some who would argue that perhaps we don't use our asphalt plant to full capacity, and so we're looking into getting some of that information to see, are there opportunities there for, I think initially when it was built in 2005, the hope was that we would be able to produce asphalt that other entities could use, which is not currently what's happening. And so we're taking a look at the asphalt plant to see, you know, it is a great asset that we have. Are we using it to the fullest extent? Are we producing as much asphalt as we can? Is there something else we could do differently that then we could either sell or exchange asphalt with other entities? So that's a long-term ongoing project, but just didn't want to give the impression that we're just kind of status quo when we're not looking to do anything differently. We are looking at ways to improve the process, but obviously Kevin and his crew deserve a lot of credit because they do an amazing job with the resources that they do have available to them. It's a tough climate.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for coming and explaining it, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Is there anything else you guys would like to say? I mean, do you feel like you got the full story across? Anything you want to add, Kevin or Jeremy? Or
You know, just need more people. We need more people. We need, we can get a lot of work done. Just don't have enough manpower.
Gotcha.
I concur with that. I think President Hudson was aiming for that, but talking about more people. But you know, if we had a little bit more people, we could pave more roads.
I don't want to extend this any further, but is there any opportunity to share equipment with the towns and villages or anywhere in the county to cut back on costs for equipment so that we can hire more people? Or has that ever been explored?
Share equipment.
Yeah, trucks, sharing of equipment.
Any cost savings? in
Yeah, I don't
sharing?
think that we've specifically looked at equipment, but Commissioner Robinson has established a really great relationship with Commissioner Marty Voss, who does DOT for the county, and we've already started conversations about, could we share in some of the training opportunities that they have to get our drivers in there. And so I think that this is just the beginning of the conversation of whether or not there are opportunities for us to share some resources.
All good?
Yeah.
Okay,
we're good?
thank you guys, yep.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate your time.